This is Gemara in Kesubos Daf Kof Atas, and today's shir has been generously sponsored by friends of the Daf in the and in honor of the incredible Chabura as we close in on the final few days of this wonderful Masechta of Kesubos. And Mir Tashem, the learning of the Chabura should bring Yeshua to the entire Chabura. And just a quick announcement, anyone that would like the sponsorship for the upcoming month of Cheshvan, as we're going to be beginning a new Masechta, the Masechta Nedarim, begins right after Cheshvan starts on Thursday, are open, as well as subsequent Dafim. Please reach out. And we're holding on the bottom of Kuf Ches Amid Beis. And once again, another Mishnah, continuing the halachas of Admoin, the halachas of Admoin that are contested, that are contested. So says the Mishnah, an interesting wording over here. Someone promises money to his son-in-law, his daughter is getting married, and the prospective father-in-law promises he's going to give such and such sum as a dowry. But then, instead of paying up, what does he do? He literally extends his foot to him, which, as Rashi over here points out, it's a lashon of bizayoinu. Basically, he defaults and he does not actually pay like he says. So we have a father-in-law who's obligated to pay to his son-in-law based on his own admission what he's going to give, but then he subsequently does not pay up. Says the Mishnah as we turn over to today's daf of Kuftes of an Aleph, Tishiv ad shetal ben roishai. The Chassan could let the Kala sit until her hair turns white. Her father was the one that obligated himself to pay. So the Chassan can leave her. She's sitting there, they did Irisin already. The Chassan could wait until the father-in-law decides to pay up, and then he'll consummate the marriage. Admoi Noimer says Admoi no. She could say, listen, if I obligated myself, then I'd agree with you. Then you're right, I would sit until my hair turns white. But now that my father was the one that stipulated the cash, what am I able to do? Oy kanus, oy pater. She could say either marry me or pater, or release me or let me go and marry someone else. That is what Admoin says, that she did nothing wrong. Why is she being punished for her father's antics? Amar Rav Gamliel, Rayani as Tivri Amon, Rav Gamliel side to the Admoin. Says the Gemara, Masnisan like Kaitana. Our Mishnah is not like the following brisa. Titania, we learned in a brisa, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yudla, Nechlu, Adma, V'chachamim, Ala, Poizik, Mazda, Chasanoi. Adma and the Chacham do not disagree in the aforementioned case of our Mishnah when one promises money to his son-in-law, and then Upashalei is a regular, and then he defaults. That everyone agrees that she could say, what do you want from me? I did nothing wrong. Alma nechliku, says Rav Yosef Rav Yehuda, what is the machlekes in Admon the Chachamim? Al shapaska hi al atzma. The machlekes is solely in a case in which she promises the money on herself. Shechachamim, the Chachamim said, you brought this issue onto yourself. The Ishav Achital ben Raisha, sit until your hair turns white. It's your fault. You have to make good on your promise. And in this case, even though she herself, and let's remember, in the Mishnah, in this case where she herself said, I understand if I promised it, but my father, what am I supposed to do? But now we're discussing this brisa, in the case where she promised, and even in this case, Admon Aimer, I thought that my father was going to pay for me. Now that my father is not playing up for me, marry me or pater. So says Rav Yosef Rav Yehuda, the machlekes is only in a case where she makes the promise, not in a case in which the father makes the promise. In the case in which the father makes the promise, in which the Mishnah said they are arguing, there says Rav Yosef Rav Yehuda, everyone agrees that she could say, it's not my fault. The machlekes is where she makes the promise. Omar Rav Gamliel, and in this case, says the Brisa Rayani as Divrei Admoin, And in this case, Rav Gamliel is siding with Admon that she could say, I thought my father was going to pay up for me, and he is not. Says the Gemara, Tana, we learned. Says a Braisa. In what case are we discussing, and the Gemara in a moment is going to explain and elaborate a bit more, in what case with a Gedaila, where the woman upon discussion is a Gedaila, she's of age. But if she is a Ketana, then Kaifin, then we use force. Says the Gemara, Kaifin Leman. Who are we forcing? If you're going to tell me that we're forcing the father to pay what the daughter promised, then it should be the opposite. It should be the exact opposite, as the Rashi in the top line points out. That if we're forcing the father, the opposite is logical, that what? If she is a Gedaila, then her words have validity, then we should force the father. But if she's a Ketana, who cares about her words? Says Rava, in the case of a Ketana, we force the husband to give a get. We don't let them stay in the state of limbo. So that is a Braisa. That is a Braisa that is making good. That is a Braisa that is elaborating a bit deeper on the case at hand. Now, Amar Rav Yitzchak ben Elazar. And let's pay attention carefully, 20 lines down. First one in the line is Yitzchak. Says, if Yitzchak ben Elazar mishmei dechizkiah, kol makom shem Rav Gamliel ra'ini as divrei admoin, halacha kamaisei. Says Rav Yitzchak ben Elazar, any time that Rav Gamliel sides with admoin, we're paskening like him. Amar le Rava, says Rava le Rav Nachman afilu bebraisa. Is that even when Rav Gamliel in the Braisa said Royani as divrei admoin? Amar le, he said, responds Rav Nachman, Mika amrinu b'mishnah. Did I say that we pass like Gamliel in a mishnah? B'chol makom sha'amar Rav Gamliel kamrinan. Wherever Rav Gamliel says his din, we pass like him. Wherever Rav Gamliel sides with admoin, we pass with him. Now, very good. So that's when we're going to pass the admoin. Now we have to pause for a moment, and inquiring minds that are thinking right now that there's a problem. Because if we're passing like Rav Gamliel, who passed like admoin in both of the aforementioned cases of the Mishnah and the Braisa, asks Tosfos over here, that's a complete impossibility, because the Braisa and the Mishnah contradict each other. So how does the Gemara just tell us that we're passing Rav Gamliel, who passed like admoin in both cases? So Tosfos comes along, and Tosfos says that we're only passing like Rav Gamliel in that which he sides with admoin in the Braisa, but not in the case of the Braisa that he said that they're not arguing. Okay, that was a little bit technical. Those who got it, great. Those who did not, at least will probably understood the Gemara's kasha. Continues the Gemara. Amar Rav Zera, Amar Rav Bar Yirmiyah Beis Varim Shamar Chanan Alocha Ki Eitzabay. Two things that Chanan said, and this is obviously going back on the previous Mishnayos that we had the machleksim between Chanan. So says Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah, two matters in which Chanan weighed in on. Halacha ki yotzei bay. The halacha is like those who agree with him, referring to Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai. This brings us back to Daf Kof Hey, to Daf Kof Zayin, that in both of those cases, Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai said, Yafa dibarta, that Hanan spoke well, and says the Gemara, that is how we're pasking. He says, Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah, Shiva dvarim shamar admoin ein halacha kietzabai. But the seven things that admoin says, the halacha does not follow the one that is ki yotzei boy. We have to figure out what that means. The halacha does not literally follow Rav Gamliel that sided with admoin. So now we have to figure out what exactly is the statement of Rabbi Yirmiyah weighing in on the two cases of Chanan, the seven cases of admoin, weighing in and saying ki yotzei boy, that by Chanan we paskin ki yotzei boy like Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai, but by admoin we do not paskin ki yotzei boy like Rav Gamliel. Says the Gemara, my Kamar, what exactly are you saying? If what you mean to say the two first cases in Kuf Ein Kuf Zayin, that Chanan said Adin, we paskin like him and Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai, Vishiv Dvarim Shamar Admon in Halacha K'maisai, and the 7 matters of Admon, which, by the way, we only said 3 of them so far, but the 7 items, which we're going to see the other 4 in the coming Mishnayos, we do not paskin like Admon, V'loi Ki Yotzei Bai, nor do we paskin like Rav Gamliel, in all 7 cases. But that can't be. V'amar Rav Yitzchak, 4 lines in the wide lines. Kuf Tasam and Aleph. V'amar Rav Yitzchak ben Elazar Mishmei Dechizki Yaakov Makom Shamar Rav Gamliel Rayani as Divrei Admoin Halacha K'maisai. We just finished saying a moment ago that whenever Rav Gamliel says that halacha is like Admoin, we paskin that way. So how could you tell me that in all 7 cases we do not paskin like Admoin? But we know that at least in some of the cases in which Rav Gamliel says we follow Admoin, that is the halacha. Ella says the Gemara, Chikamar, this is what it means in the last narrow line. Shnei dvarim sharm chanan halacha k'maisai uki yaitzabai. The 2 items that Chanan weighed in on, we paskin like him, and like those who agree with him, Rav Gamliel. Sheva dvarim, excuse me, Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai. Sheva dvarim shamar admoin ein halacha ki yaitzabai. The 7 items that Admoin paskin on in halacha ki yotzei bai, we do not paskin like those who follow Admoin, meaning Rabbi Gamliel, hakamaisai halacha bekulu. But the hakamaisai, the halacha is like himself, Admoin in all of them. Meaning we don't paskin like Rav Gamliel, who only agrees partially, but rather like Admoin. Asks the Gemara on the second wide line. 1 second. The statement that we just quoted, where Rav Gamliel says, whenever I see the words of Admon, Omar in, this implies that when Rav Gamliel said Allah is like Rav Gamliel Admoin, that's indeed when we pass like Admoin. And Lo Yomar Loi, when Rav Gamliel did not say we pass like Admon, it sounds like we do not pass like Admon. And based on what we just said, it would come out not that way. Says the Gemara, Elachi Kamar, the third and final attempt. Shnei dvarim shamar chanalach k'maisich yotzei, very good. Shiva dvarim shamar admoin yesh ben shalach k'maisich yotzei. There are sometimes you pass like admoin and like Rav Gamliel. Yesh ben shalach k'maisich eloki yotzei. And there are sometimes we don't pass like admoin, but rather we pass like Rav Gamliel. But kol makom shamar Gamliel rayni is every admoin lach k'maisich enach live with other cases. Now it's a little bit of a lengthy discussion trying to figure out the statement of Rav Zira Amar Bar Yirmiyah, but it's coming out like we started out saying that in any case in which we're paskening, let Rav Gamliel pass like Admoin, those are indeed going to be the cases that is going to be the halacha lemaisa. We continue with the Mishnah on the bottom of Kuf Tesam and Aleph, which is case in din number 4 of Admoin. Ha'irer ala sad. If someone is ma'ir on a field, someone comes into Bezdin one day and says, Ruvain, the house, the field he's living on is not his, it's mine. But Ruvain pulls out his star, and on the star that Ruvain bought this field, the person that's coming into Bezdin has signed on that star. Let's say I walk into Bezdin and I say the field that Ruvain has is not his but mine. Ruvain says, I don't understand. Look, here's my shar that I bought this field. And it says, Avi Slensky signed in the bottom. Paid, he signed as an aid. So Adma Naimer, Hashini Nechla Risha Kashemenu. Says Adma, you know what I could say? I could say, you're right, I signed. But you know why I signed? Because the Rishon, the person that Ruvain bought this field from, is Kasha. He's a difficult person, and I knew I would never be able to get the field from him. But Hasheni, you Ruvain, is Nayachli. You're easier to deal with. So I signed in the field that you Ruvain bought it specifically so that I could bring this moment in Bezdin, and I could get the field from you because I knew I would never be able to get it from the previous owner. That is the din of Admoin. Says the Chachamim, no, from the fact that you signed on the sale, you lost your schos. Similarly, if this field is written as a boundary mark in a sale that the person himself signed, as well, you have lost your schos. So we have a machlekes Admon and the Chachamim, whether we view the signing of the shtar, that is right now upon, that is being contested, whether we view that as a raya, that it's not yours, or not. So says the Gemara, Amar Abai, Lo Yishanu, the din of the Mishnah, that when you sign on a field, you lost your schos, Ela Eid. The machlokes that Admon says you have not lost your schos, and the Chachamim said you have, is only if you signed as a witness. Aval dayin lo yiberes chusai. But if I signed on that shtar as a dayin, and then I myself want to contest the ownership, that is fine. Why? The Tani Rav Chia has taught us, Eidim never sign on a document. You never want to put your signature on something unless you actually read the document and know what's going on. So if you read the document and then you signed it, it shows you not to ownership. But as we turn over to Kuftes Amid Beis, 1 second, that's Kuftes Amid Aleph. When you turn over to Kuftes Amid Beis, here he is. Avol Dayanim. But when a dayan signs a star, a dayan could sign on a star, as Rashi points out, to bekiyam, to certify the document even without reading it. Why? Because what's he signing? He signs that he knows that those signatures are appropriate signatures, but he doesn't necessarily look at the contents of the document. So if one signed as a dayan, that does not necessarily call into question the validity of the sale. Continues the Gemara, it doesn't necessarily show that he cannot contest the ownership afterwards. So the Mishnah continued, and the Mishnah concluded that if the field is used as a boundary mark for another field, he as well lost his schos. Amar Abaya again qualifies this din in the Mishnah, Lo shanu elo la'acher. This is only when it's sold to another person. But if it's sold to that person himself, the person that is calling into question the sale, then lo yiberes chusay. We'll see what this means as we elaborate. To Amar, 4 lines from the top. It's lo avdeli achi lo avimizvan le ni'elei. You know why? Because again, I'm coming to Bez, I'm saying, Ruvain, that field is mine. And Ruvain says, I don't understand, but you signed on a document a different field that I bought from you, and this field was listed as a boundary mark. So you know what I can tell you? I can tell you, if I didn't sign this document, you never have sold the other field to me. What should I have done? I should have made a grand announcement. Again, I'm calling into question Reuven's ownership of field A. But I myself bought from Reuven field B. And when I bought field B, it said that field A is a boundary mark owned by Reuven. So what could I have done to protect myself? I should have made a grand announcement that, by the way, field A is now Reuven's, it's really wine. He would never have sold me the field. So what should I have done? I should have been Meiser Maidah. I should have told an aide, by the way, I'm only signing because I want to be able to purchase the other field, but really, the boundary marker is wrong. I would never have done that because people talk, and what would have happened is everyone would have found out that which I said, and then he would never have sold the field to me. So I needed to be able to buy field B. So I didn't protest. I didn't tell anyone about the boundary marker that was incorrect of field A, just so that I was able to buy field B. We conclude this part of the shir with a few short stories. 7 lines from the top. There was a person who, let's say again the same case, I'm challenging the ownership of Reuven of a certain field, but that field was used as a boundary mark in a sale, lacher, to someone else. And then what happened? So he challenged and he said, that other field is not yours. But then Vishachiv, okay, let's not use myself. Let's use Shimon. And then Vishachiv, and then Shimon is Nifter. So again, Shimon used that field as a boundary mark. And then he challenged the ownership of Reuven of that other field. Then Shimon is Nifter. So what does Bezdin do? Bezdin puts an apatrapa, Bezdin puts an administrator, a third party, to help the children. Abaye says, I'm sorry, you want to claim that field is not Ruvain's, but the fact that you signed an ishtar that says that other field is a boundary mark, you lost your schus. Omar, the Apachapa says, 1 second. You know what the father of the Yisayimim, if Shimon was still alive, you know what he would have said? Tell him, you know why I signed that the other field was a boundary marker? It wasn't because the whole field was. It's because there's one row in that field that's a boundary marker. You're saying very good, Abba Chappis. Now when you have a believability and credibility to say that the only reason why you signed is this being a boundary marker is for that one row. So says Abaya, okay, so then go and at least give him that one field, that one row, because you're admitting that row is his. Says the Gemara, on that row there was palms on it, and that's a very expensive tree. So says the Abatrap is if the father was alive, if Shimon was still alive, you know what he would say? It's true that I signed in this field that this row is a boundary marker, but subsequently I bought these trees, this furrow from him. Amar Le says, Abaye Shabbat Kamart, you're saying very good up at Shabbos. If he says I bought it back from them on Amar Abaye, Iman the Mokil Abba Chaba Nekin Ki Hai Diom da Fuche Bischuta Diasmi. Comments Abaye, if someone has to create an Abba Chabbos, make an Abba Chabbos like this guy, this Abba Chabbos did a wonderful job that he advocated for the Chosim of the Abba Chabbos. And we continue with the Mishnah on the second half of Kovtasim Beis, which is case number 5 of Admoin. Says the Mishnah Mishalchum Dinas Yamba of the Derech Sadehu. Someone goes overseas and he comes back and he sees that all the surrounding fields around his field were bought by different people, and he no longer has an entranceway into his field. He no longer has a road to get into his field because all 4 surrounding boundaries were bought by someone else. So what does he do? How does he get into his field? Admon Aimer Sarah says Admon, he has to be able to get into his field. So they give him the shortest possible route so he can get in, and then they lose the smallest amount of the 4 new purchasers. They could sell him. If he wants to buy a road, they could sell it to him for as much as they want. Or he has to fly in the air, basically saying that they can force him to pay whatever they want if he wants to buy an entranceway into his field. Says the Gemara, 1 second. My time with the Rabban, Shaber Kamer Admoin. Admoin has a good taina. Admoin saying, I used to have an entrance to my field. Now I have to have an entrance to my field. So why are the Rabbanan saying, no, they can charge an exorbitant amount? Admoin seems to be correct. Explains the Gemara, Amar Rav Yudah Marav ki goin shegefu arba minei adam arba ruchai sehel. The case is when 4 people surrounded it from 4 different sides. And therefore, as Rashi points out, each person could push him off and say, oh, don't come to me, go to the other guy. And it's a big circle. Each person can keep on pushing him off. And that's the reason why the Chachamim say they could charge as much as they want. Asks the Gemara, Iachi, my time with Admoin. Okay, beautiful. Now we flip it back and we say, so Admoin, what's the reason you're saying you have to grant him a short path? Amar Rava, Barba doesn't make a says Rava. If the 4 owners bought the field from 4 previous owners, or or 4 people who own it now bought it from 1 owner, then you're right. If there's currently 4 owners on the 4 fields, you're right. Each one could push him off, and Admon would agree that they're not forced to give him a path. Ki Bligi says, Rava, what is the machlekes in the Mishnah? One person currently owns all 4 fields, but he bought it from 4 different people. So Admain Savar Mikol Makam Dark Islach Gabach says Admain is one owner now of all 4 fields. I can tell him, in one of your 4 fields, I certainly have a road, and therefore you have to give me something. Rabbanan Savri know that this guy could say, Shaskis. If you're quiet, then great. If you're quiet and you want to buy a path, no problem. V'lo, and if you don't want to be quiet, Ma'ajun Ashtar Marayu, I'll return the stars to the 4 owners, V'lamotzi Lashtuya Dina Ba'adayu, and you won't be able to get anything. So that is going to be the case in which there is a machlaikas, where there's currently 1 owner that bought it from 4. And we conclude today's share with 2 stories. We're about 15 lines in the bottom of Kuf Tesem and Beis. The first word in line is Behadayu. Da'amar lo dikli lebras. There was a man who said to the Yarshim, there's a dekel tree should be given to my daughter, but he didn't say which tree. After he was niftar, the Yisayim went and they divided up the estate, but they didn't give the daughter a palm tree. They didn't give her that dekel tree. So Rav Yosef thought the same thing as our Mishnah, that each one of the Yarshim could push them off and say, well, go to the other guy, and therefore they're not going to be able to gain any. She's never going to be able to get anything. Are the 2 cases comparable? Also, each one can push them off. But in this case, the tree is in the property of all the Yarshim, because the father did not specify, and therefore she has the ownership to something in their fields. They have to give her. Maitakantayu, says the Gemara. So what is the remedy? What should they do? They should give her a tree and then go back and redivide the estate so that the division and the Yarshim all get equal shares. And we conclude with 6 lines at the bottom, says the Gemara, final story. There was again a man who's dying, and he said to the Yarshim, a palm tree, a dekel should be given to my daughter. Shachavi was nifter for shavik tree palga the dekla. And he left over 2 halves of 2 palm trees and some full ones. So Ravashi was wondering, does a person call 2 halves of a tree, and therefore they're able to give her 2 halves? Indeed, people do call 2 halves of the tree a tree, and therefore her hand is on the bottom hand, and that is what they're able to give her. We'll pick up from the next Mishnah as we can close out the final few days in the next year on Daf Kof.